I just lost the intro. I always click the go live before the. Oh, there we go.
That's why it's really important to have a plan and understand what your goals are.
In fact, my camel out there is suffering right now with a broken back.
So I actually found Pepe when it was only a couple of hours old, and I'm like, oh, this is a funny meme.
Oh my god.
Yo! Who is this DJ?
The old man is swing trading over years at a time. And it's like, that's where the real money is made.
The answer is a permanent loss. With single-sided staking, you don't have to worry about impermanent loss.
Really, at the end of the day, it's just the matter of a macro market. It's just what happens.
If you're aware, if you're disciplined, you can hone that into further financial growth.
Financial freedom, so we can actually live life and not have to be constantly living paycheck to paycheck. I mean, that's the ultimate goal, more or less, right?
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, crypto degenerates, ducks and squirrels, welcome to episode number 79 of the DGen Roundtable Book Club. I'm going to be your host for tonight. Hello, everyone. My name is Will Stevenson. I'm an iron worker that travels around the United States, knocking over TV towers. And I'm joined tonight by the DGen Roundtable's very own Mr. Zenith. Zenith is the DGen Roundtable's legal and government analyst, and also the creator of Book Club, and assisted by myself every other week for hosting. And yeah, we're just a bunch of DGens, love doing DGen things. We're also joined by all of you guys, and we are very happy to be, I think this is the first book club for this book, because this book came out like 2 or 3 weeks ago or something like that. So not a whole lot of people have read it. Not a whole lot of people have discussed things about it. I'm certainly going to get a lot of my memories all wrong and kerfunklified as we go through the show. But without any further ado, Zenith Broski, welcome, dude. How are you? What's new and exciting with you?
I am doing very well. Not much. I squeaked in 9 holes of golf before this while also finishing up the audiobook. But it is that time of the year where it gets dark at 5:30, and I'm very sad, and I can't play till 9 p.m. anymore, but it is what it is. Outside of that, I may or may not have indulged in an old itch scratching, which is I fired up the old World of Warcraft again for a bit, and I was like, oh, yeah, this is kind of fun. I remember this.
Fuck yeah, dude. Fuck yeah. I've noticed also StreamYard is showing up, or is posting names for funky things, and that totally just threw me off my game there. But you got to play some golf. Bro, I don't know why everyone doesn't get on the same like program as Arizona and just do away with daylight savings time. It's like this shit just fucking pisses me off, man. I hate changing my clocks. I don't care that the sun goes to bed early or stays up late or whatever the fucking hell. Like, just keep the damn clocks the same, and we'll all be just fine. Because we lost an hour of sunlight in the evening. We gained the hour of sunlight in the morning, right? That's what happens. Yeah. Fuck that shit.
Yeah. Well, the great irony is that this is also, I believe, daylight savings time was originally proposed by Benjamin Franklin, but at the same time was also vehemently argued against. And to this day, many farmers, like I'm sure some of our good friends out there will tell you, like, yeah, you can change your clocks. Doesn't change how the animals feel about the sun, though.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I learned recently that all of China is in one time zone. They do one time over in China.
That is absolutely atrocious.
Hey man, they do what they do. It doesn't matter how you measure the thing. What matters is that it's measured. All right. So like, people in East China, they're probably used to the way that things are set up over there. But enough about that. What'd you think of this book, Broski? This is a fun book. It's very very interesting. It brings to light a whole bunch of stuff that a lot of people don't think about. A lot of really good history in there. Also some opinion, some stuff that is both interesting and some stuff that is like, whoa, would not have guessed to hear that in a book or whatever. But what are your thoughts, bro?
I thought this was a fantastic read. If there is anyone out there that's looking for just like a good primer on US history, or more of like kind of like the foundational documents and the way that we do governance in some of the original debates that went on even after the Constitution, but within like the first 100 years of the country, this is a fantastic history lesson. It's nice and brief as well, but it gets to all the major points. It tries to cover it in more of a matter-of-fact way of like, here's what happened, here were the arguments at the time. It doesn't do a whole lot of trying to impose like opinion or try to sway the reader in one way or another. It's just a good informational primer. And gosh, I want to say the whole audiobook was like 7.5 hours, and the last hour and a half of that is on another concept that the author injects outside of what the original manual was. So if you just want to go off the original manual, you're looking at 6 hours at 1 time speed, by the way. And it's very doable at 2 times speed as well. But if you really want to if you want to like digest and like really get a lot of the sauce, I would say like, yeah, you can do this at 1.5 times speed. It still might feel a little bit slow, but these are some like pretty deep concepts that I think it's good to pay attention to. But overall, I got to say, I was very, very pleasantly surprised by this book, because you told me like, yeah, this is an army manual that they rewrote. And I was like, this is a damn good army manual. What are we doing over there?
It actually got the original manual got taken out of production 4 years after it was made. So
Really?
like it was from 1928 to 1932 is when it was like rocking and rolling and stuff. And at least that's what I remember Brandon talking about in a couple of his videos. After the book came out, he did a couple YouTube videos describing how it goes and like what he kind of expects to do, or what his goal is and stuff. But yeah, bro, the original training manual was not out for very long at all before they tried pulling it from the shelves and things. So
if I could give like another descriptor for this book for everybody that watched or read our book club or the actual book on Starship Troopers, and you really liked kind of like the philosophical arguments that were going on and the flashbacks to like the classroom with the army guy explaining these like social and like citizenship concepts, that's what this book is, but it's for the US, and I think it does a very good job of it.
It's really cool book. I highly recommend you guys read it. It's a fucking awesome book. It's got a beautiful cover of lady of the goddess Columbia. And the whole idea is like she's like kind of sort of bruised and battered and a little bit tired and just kind of unruly and unkempt, but still like positive and looking forward. And that's the kind of the whole idea of the book, is that America is not what it's supposed to be. It's not the great thing that it originally set out to be. It's changed a little bit, but there's still hope for getting cooler in the future. And on the subject of it being like easy to read, it's in like very large print in a very friendly font. I remember another one of the things that Brandon was talking about in one of his videos is that he specifically chose this type of font because there's a type of font that's allowed in the courtrooms because it's supposed to be like easy on judges' eyes when they're reading, thousands and thousands of pages of documents, every single week. So they got to read a lot of shit. But anyways, it's easy to read. It's super like digestible. It's not crazy complicated or convoluted or anything, and just a really great book, if you ask me. So, but enough about what you ask me and what you ask Zenith. We should ask the folks at home what's going on with them. It's time for the best part of the show. It's time for chat motherfucking shoutouts, the part where we talk to the people at home who are so kind and so awesome as to be talking to us. Y'all are fucking awesome and excellent, and we love seeing you every time. And also, before we do chat shoutouts, I'm going to drink some pucker face pickle juice because I was at a gas station, totally coincidental, and they happen to have some pickle juice there. And I was like, is this shit any good? And the cashier lady was like, yeah, it's great for hydration. So have you some pickle juice and you'll have a great time. And so I've been drinking pickle juice throughout the day. And I got to say, it's basically just, vinegar and cucumbers and some other things, but freaking awesome.
Great for hydration. Maybe not great for the people that you're having a conversation with at close proximity.
Yes, this is true. Probably should not be spraying vinegar breath at people that you're hanging out next to.
That would be greatly appreciated.
But yeah, water, vinegar, salt, natural flavoring, polysorbate. Yeah, It's basically water and vinegar with a little bit of cucumber or
I know this is a bit of a rabbit hole, but do you remember like earlier on in like the 2000s and stuff during like TVs and movies, people would make jokes about like, oh, I asked for extra onions on my burger or in this sandwich, and then their date looks at them and be like, I guess we're not kissing tonight. I feel like that joke has just like really fallen off, and I feel like I haven't heard that in over a decade.
I don't think I've ever seen or heard that joke in like, is this like film whatever?
It was just like it was a thing that was in just kind of like a cultural reference. Like, gosh, I remember in particular it was in it was like one of the NCIS, like the older TV shows. I remember it very clearly. Like the girl on the date asked for extra onions in her soup, and the guy's like, well, I guess you didn't plan on kissing me tonight then. And she's like, what are you talking about? I just like onions, guy.
That's kind of funny. That's a good trope. I like that trope. Especially like that's the reverse order that I would expect it. I would expect the dude to be doing something uncalibrated, like, hey, yo, give me more onions so I'm not attractive, from my breath and things. So that's hilarious. But anyways, we're gonna get into the chat motherfucking shout outs.
To the chats.
To the chats, we're gonna start off with me because I said like tat smash button in the very beginning. So reminder for everyone. Bro, that happens so often. I don't even like untype when I'm typing that into places. So that is like my most common misspelling. I'm glad that my phone. I did that on my keyboard because my phone would probably autocorrect that. But yeah, remember everybody to like that smash button. We all love the stuff. What is it? The YouTube metrics and analytics and everything. So fucking good to see. Speaking of things that are good to say, we got Mr. Slide 180 coming in here with the cheers, and I am tonight, because I'm not driving right now, I am sipping some Norwegian Mjod, some Norwegian lingonberry mead. Nutrition facts: it is made with 100% friendship. So this is some of the lingonberry mead that Josh has made. It's fucking delicious and awesome. So shout out to you, Mr. Josh Broski. I am drinking your wine tonight while we do DGen Roundtable Book Club. Good to see you, Broski. We're also joined by Mr. Ken Turian54X, who says, what's up, DGens? What's up to you, broski? Everyone's favorite pilot, farmer, and dungeon master, rocking and rolling, coming in. He's got some thoughts later on I've seen in the chat, so we'll get to those here in a second. We're also joined by Moonpilled Rational Optics. He says, hit the books, DGens. Absolutely, hit those books. Make sure that you guys are reading plenty. I know that me and Zenith are reading at least one book a week because we do book club, but I think that it's really important for everyone to read. And I gotta say, like, the people that benefit the most from book club are definitely me and Zenith. Like, we're a whole lot smarter now than we were. Oh man, when did we start this, bro?
October of 2023.
Damn, bro, over 2 years ago. That's crazy. We've done 79 books or 79 episodes, probably pretty close to 60 books or something like that.
Closer to 70, I think.
Well,
gosh, how many sequences
did we do?
Yeah, I thought we did Sci-Vive in 6 episodes.
Okay. And then was there anyone else that we broke? Well, fuck, I guess it is pretty close to 70 books then. Fucking A right.
Sounds about right.
That's fucking nuts. Remember to hit those books, guys. Go read, because like this shit's super duper valuable. I know that you guys are entertained and you love hanging out and listening to us talk, but like the more people that read these books along with us, the more people have super cool and awesome conversations with us in the chats while we're covering the book, and that can correct me when I get things wrong, which I often do because my memory is dog shit. But we've got some updates. He's working on some Age of Empires recently, so that's very good.
Every man in his 30s, every red-blooded American man in his 30s dreams about remembering the days when you're on the computer micromanaging small units of men on a fantasy landscape. There you go. Age of Empires is a classic. That's one of the games that's actually had a pretty big resurgence lately, especially with people going back to the original games and actually like playing online multiplayer with each other or just doing the scenarios and stuff. So shout out. What an OG right there. Throwing up the Age of Empires. Love it.
Hell yeah. We're also joined by Mr. Hex Glenn. Hex Glenn says, happy weekends, DGens, with a lemon. We got the lemon, Hex Glenn. Happy weekend to you too, sir. Fucking A right. Love to see it. Kenturian rocks and rolls in with fuck daylight savings. It's dark at 4 p.m. in the winter up here. Yeah, that's fucking, it's like, just let the sun do its thing. Just let the clocks do its thing. We shouldn't have to mess with the clocks. We should be just like Arizona, who doesn't have daylight savings time because they're cool. And they say, fuck that shit. We're going to put our fucking foot down. So be like Arizona. Tell daylight savings to go screw itself.
Look, it can either be the daylight savings time, or if you're saying up here, I imagine you're pretty far north. Back when I was in Washington, I was in Bellingham, Washington, which is like the last major city before you hit the Canadian border. So it's pretty up there. It's not quite Canada, but it's up there. I remember in the summer times, I was like working outside and the sun set, like just hit the horizon, and it was like 9:30 p.m. And I thought to myself, wow, this is amazing. I love this. And then wintertime came around and it was dark at 3 o'clock. And I was like, what the hell is going on?
Yep.
So it's the latitude and also the daylight savings time. But
shout out to all the Washingtonians up there. I got a buddy over there in Mount Vernon who I go visit all the fucking time. I think it's north of Bellingham. So I fucking love it up there, man. It is absolutely beautiful. Moonpilled rolls in saying he thinks that Australia has 4 time zones, theoretically in quadrants. That is interesting. I wonder if they just have a oh man, if because I think that the middle of Australia is uninhabitable. So it's like, why even have a time zone there? There is no time. It is always death time over
this
in Australia.
Looks atrocious.
Holy shit. They have a split? They have a
Yeah. So it looks like, so for no daylight savings time, they have 3 time zones. For daylight savings time, they have 5. And they're also half-hour increments as well. That is okay.
I mean, we're looking at it in the flat version, and Australia is quite large. So with like the Mercator projection, I imagine that the southeastern side would be further on the sun rotational part than like the northern, the northeastern side. So I don't really know. We're gonna have to ask Sniper next time we're in a Telegram chat with him. Shout out to Sniper, by the way, our ninja watcher. We love you, Sniper. If you're watching right now, your country is an interesting place. I will say all the things that try to kill you, all the outbacks and the boomerangs, and the kangaroos, and the weird daylight savings time. Freaking crazy. We have a question from Arceus. Why was it taken out of service? I will cover that during the show, but good question, Arceus. Glad that we could see you with us tonight. Shout out to Arceus. We've also got, Moonpilled Rational Optics has dropped another book recommendation in the chat. That would be most fantastic. We do like the recommendations. Hell yeah, dude. But Moonpilled is probably the most recommender of Moonpilled Rational Optics. Might have more books that we've read at his request in DJ Roundtable Book Club than myself, or maybe Zenith. I think Zenith, you think for yourself for the most part when it comes to book recommendations. But I know that I've picked Moonpilled Rational Optics books quite a few times when it was my turn to host. So if he's not second, he's definitely third place for number of books that have been read on our show at his request. So
for sure. Hey, I also pick some of the books that get recommended to me by the chat, and then also people that we talk to pretty regularly. So do I have the list of classics that we're working our way through? Yes. Do I also actually really enjoy a lot of the recommendations we get? Also, yes.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think one of my favorites at Moonpilled, of the Moonpill recommendations, my favorite one was the Think Like a Roman Emperor, which is the Marcus Aurelius book. That one was super awesome.
I like that one a lot.
Nice and quick, but just like packed full of value. So freaking love it. Speaking of things packed full of value, we got Kenturian rolling in here. Extra garlic on the garlic fries. That'll keep your date away. There you go. keep those vampires from getting smooches in the middle of the night. So
I gotta say though, like when I'm cooking, one of my favorite things is just like the smell of fresh garlic.
Oh yeah.
Like when you're cooking, it's good. And then also like after I've even cleaned everything up and I sit down at the computer and I go to like itch my nose or something, and like my fingertips are still just kind of like soaked in garlic, and I'm like, well, that's still pretty good. By the way, fun fact, when I like making my fried rice, I put garlic in the original saute, and then I actually add a little bit of diced raw garlic on top to finish it off, and it gives a good little bite to the profile. It's good, but it will keep the date away for sure.
Keep this in mind, buyer beware, caveat emptor. All right, and then finally for the chat shoutouts, we've got Arceus again. I've read parts of so many books thanks to book club. Absolutely, you are welcome, Arceus, and thank you for reading the books that we read. Like it justifies or doesn't justify, but it contributes to the value of what we're doing.
Absolutely. And it also helps contribute to the conversation that we have on stream, because if you're more familiar with the source material, it's fantastic. But even on the flip side of the coin, if one of the things that we can do on here is that we will suffer through the books like Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith, so that way we can get to the end of it and we can be like, hey, if you're going to read this book, just read like these few chapters. You don't have to suffer through the other 36 hours of it. So
there you go.
Yeah.
I totally I was typing in the question to ChatGPT, so I missed like the meat and potatoes of what you said. But you were basically saying like it makes the conversation better, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of like the idea behind like college classes, which is like the old school idea of college is like, oh, you're supposed to have read chapters before you get to class, so that way when you're in class, you simply just ask the professor questions about the chapter and they can clarify the things you didn't understand, as opposed to the inverse of like normal public school, which is you go to class knowing nothing and then they tell you the concept and then they also assign you extra reading afterwards to clarify the concept. So
yeah. Okay. I do think that oh, there we go. I'm declaring my own personal time zone. It's going to change bi-weekly, and I won't specify whether that's twice a week or once every 2 weeks. This changes based on a proprietary algorithm. So good afternoon for now.
Hear me out. It's a maritime thing for sure, but there is a concept called local apparent noon. If you are out in sea and you want to know where you are longitudinally in the world, what you can do is you keep your clock set to the world clock, and then you take a sextant, and then you use the sextant to identify when the sun is at the highest point in the sky. On the sextant, what you'll see is you're trying to keep the horizon here, and then you see the sun below it, and it's going to make this nice little arc. And when it just kisses that horizon based on how you have the sextant, that's when you take your local apparent noon, and that is how you find out exactly where you are in the world. So hear me out. If you just lived your life based on your own local apparent noon, man, it would work. You'd have to get pretty good at math, but you could do it.
Didn't we have something on book club where he talked about the guy who figured out how to do longitude? Because latitude's easy because of your sun noon thing, right? Is that what you're talking about? Is latitude?
Longitude was easy. Latitude was not. Or, gosh,
latitude.
Am I getting this right?
Which one's which? I don't remember which one's which. The one that's about the circumference, that's the easy one.
Yeah, that's
but the
latitude.
up and down. Okay.
Longitude was yes, for a long time when it comes to sailing and seafaring and navigating. Latitude was pretty easy to do. Longitude was the hard thing to do because it required the invention of the chronometer. I don't know if I've ever.
That's right.
I've ranted about this multiple times. I wouldn't be surprised if I brought this up a dozen times at this point. But pretty much what it was when you had the invention of a reliable chronometer, aka a watch, that you could carry on a ship. That allowed you to keep track of wherever the time was that you set off from, like, I don't know, England or something. And then wherever you are in the sea, and you can do the math to figure out how far ahead or behind of a known place in the world you are, you can figure out where your unknown position is to now be known. So that is how you do longitude.
That's right. It was part of a book club because I remember talking about it. It was a watchmaker who was the guy that figured it out.
John Harrison, an English carpenter and clockmaker. His first marine chronometer was completed in 1735 and was the solution to the longitude problem.
Bro, I swear to God, we've covered this in book club. I don't remember which one.
I remember, I don't remember which one, but I can tell you probably why I brought this up, which is we probably talked about museums. And this is the reason why the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum in DC is one of my favorite museums. A, because it has cool stuff, but also they have an entire exhibit where they walk you through the invention of navigation. And the first thing they start out with is this exact thing. They go from, okay, we figured out how to do latitude. Then we learned how to do longitude. Then we started really getting good at map making. Aviation comes on, and then we start using radio frequencies to determine how far you away from known points. Then we go from radio frequencies to actual frequencies. The frequency is used by GPS. And then we even have the creation of DGPS, which is digital GPS, which can pretty much take you in from like a 300-yard radius circle down to about like a 9-yard radius circle. it's a super cool exhibit. It does a great job of laying it out one, then the other, then the other, then the other. By the end of it, you're like, got it. I now know how GPS works. Sweet.
I have a fun fact for you regarding DGPS. My father was part of the creation of DGPS.
Ooh, very cool.
Yeah, over when he was back in the Coast Guard, they were putting up all the towers and all the stations and doing all that stuff when he was during, I think it was the final his final, X, Y, and Z years as an officer. But yeah, he was part of the DGPS. So we got like mugs back at my dad's house. They're like DGPS, and it's got the little tower and the beacons on it, and
That's
super
sick.
neat. Yeah.
That's
So
super
like
sick.
I occasionally get to talk to my father, and we get to shoot the shit about like towers and communication stuff. And like I'm on the the land side, and he's on like the sea side, and it's super nifty, super awesome. But anyways, let's get back to the book. We're almost a half hour in, and we haven't really talked about the book too much. So I'm going to go and touch on Arceus' question real quick, and then we'll hop into the summary. Why was it taken out of service? So from what I recall, just based on memory from a stream that Brendan did, is he talked about it was like controversial, and so Congress removed it. I typed in the same question to ChatGPT, and what they came up with is that the U.S. Army Training Manual 2000-25 was removed from training because it was an outdated manual on citizenship that was issued in 1928. It was replaced with newer, updated training materials to reflect changes in laws and military procedures. The original publication was November 30th of 1928, and it was withdrawn less than 5 years, likely due to being outdated. But this is AI, so take that information with a grain of salt. And it's been apparently replaced with more current training manuals and things. Now, I think that there is a Historum. So I'm on Historum.com, and it's saying that there was just more modern stuff made. Debate politics. But anyways, like I like to buy into Brandon's explanation that it was taken out because it was spicy, because it basically like it talks about things that that I don't think the government wants citizens to know about, at least in today's day and age. So like I'm taking today's mindset and applying it to back then. So I don't really know, but it did cause a hubbub over in Congress or something, is what Brandon was saying on one of his streams. So it does empower the service members at the time, because this was a training manual for the Army. It empowers service members with what it means to be a citizen, and like what all that entails. So
Yeah, I'm probably spitballing on this one, but if I had to
Mhm.
guess why this was removed, I would argue that this is probably not like a manual for a general army, which isn't like something that every soldier has to read. I would definitely categorize this as more of like a document or training course that you'd put like senior enlisted or some sort of like officer corps program through, because this
Yeah.
definitely reminds me of the vibes of Starship Troopers when Rico goes to OCS school. Like these are the exact kind of lessons that they're trying to impart during that time of the book, and this makes it feels very, very similar.
I agree. Yeah, it does seem like something that like you wouldn't just give this to Joe Schmo on the dirt. This is like more like higher level knowledge type stuff. So that's my best guess as well. And I don't know, apparently it was taken out because it was outdated, or because it was replaced. But a lot of the stuff that they talk about is like old legal code and legal precedent. So let's go ahead, and with that being said, let's go ahead and hop into the summarization of the movie, or of the book, excuse me. Now, I must admit, there is hardly no information online about this book, because it only just came out about 3 weeks ago. So I have a dirty secret to say, and that is that I screen recorded this entire book playing from start to finish on my phone, and then I pulled the MP3 file from it, and then I put that into the summarization tool that I use for YouTube videos and for Telegram streams and things. And I had Plod AI create the summarization of the book for me, and then from there I used it to create like the ChatGPT show outline and things of that nature and stuff. So it might have like some of these chapters and ideas might be a little bit wrong, but they're going to be a lot closer than a whole lot of the other ChatGPT stuff that we do when it comes to creating show material for the DGen Roundtable. So without any further ado, oh my goodness, there's a whole bunch of concepts in this book too, but the basic summary is, this book is a book that presents a complex and often controversial and deeply nationalist interpretation of American history, government, and citizenship. A central recurring argument is that the United States operates under a two-tiered system: a superior class of state citizens, often described as white, with with rights rooted in the original Constitution, excuse me, and a subordinate class of U.S. citizens, which includes non-whites, immigrants, and legal fictitious with rights granted by the 14th Amendment, such as like corporations and stuff. This framework is used to analyze everything from monetary policy and individual rights to the nation's character. The readings champion a return to what the author defines as originalist constitutional principles, including gold and silverbacked currency, limited federal government, and an emphasis on individual initiative over collectivism. He celebrates a specific American character, which is that forged by the pioneers and the Puritans, based on self-reliance, hard work, religious piety, and a willingness to defend the nation. A separate but related philosophical thread, the Code of the Picklitarian, offers a modern path to personal sovereignty through intellectual mastery, emotional control, and strategic communication, aiming to restore these same foundational American ideals by inspiring a renaissance of self-governance and personal responsibility. So I'm now scrolling through the core concepts, and I don't think that there's a whole lot of them. I see 4 core concepts, so I will go ahead and read them to you because I couldn't remember if there was like 8 or 12 or something. So because there's only 4, we're going to go through the 4 core concepts that are covered in the book. The first concept is that it's a two-tiered system of American citizenship. So the core theory is that the texts argue that there's 2 distinct classes of citizenship that exists. The first is a state citizen, also called people, which is described as the original and superior class for whom the constitutional republic was created, primarily white individuals with direct access to the Bill of Rights. The second is the U.S. citizen, which is also called persons, a subordinate federal class created by the 14th Amendment for newly freed slaves, non-whites, and legal fictions like corporations. So real quick, before we go any further, this book might be difficult for more emotional people to read because they use the phrase whites and non-whites, and it's not a crazy concept. And I can't remember if he describes this in the book or if he described it in one of his videos, but he goes on to say that it's like if Japan or if Japanese people went on to go and declare independence from Japan, and they go to another little island and they set up their own little culture, and they're like, hey, a whole bunch of Japanese people can come over here and we're going to create a country, and the people that we allow in are Japanese, and we're a Japanese place and we do Japanese stuff, and it's all about Japanese, this, that, and the other thing. It's not about like racism, it's not about like exclusionariness. It's just like, this is the group of people that was here before that is like described. And a lot of the stuff, like when the 14th Amendment was created, it was created in response to like the 3/5 rule for black people after the end of the Civil War and things like that. So there's a lot of uncomfortable language for people that aren't used to the concept and the historical meaning of all this stuff. So applying like a today's interpretation of like the white citizen makes it sound like it's more bombastic or inflammatory than it is actually meant to be in the book. So
yeah, so real quick, this is part of why I said that this is a non-emotional description of the historical context of what was happening. These are the original legal arguments that you get from the early 1800s surrounding all these kinds of things. So a lot of the language, when you go into the people and persons definition, that when you're explaining it, it might sound odd, but if you hear the phrase people and persons, well, you might be familiar with that because that is some of the context or some of the actual quotation that is used in foundational documents. For instance, the 4th Amendment says that people and persons have the right to be secure in their persons' effects from unwanted search and seizures, that kind of stuff. So you see that language being used there. And then also, the book definitely does do the delineation of like white, native-born, land-holding people as having the right to vote, because that's the way that it was back in the day. They do the best effort to explain the rationale behind these things, but at the same time, it also definitely brings up the idea of what is a people versus being or a person. And then ultimately it does tell the story of the United States, which is that it is kind of the vision or the story of expanding these rights to all of the people of the United States. So specifically, like you mentioned with the 14th Amendment, that was created after the Civil War to incorporate all previously enslaved Americans as being part of people with liberties inside of the liberties and rights inside of the United States. What that
And I like
entailed
that you
was,
use the word incorporate there. That's a very good and particular word. This Brendan Joe Williams is very big on definitions, so good choice there. Sorry, continue.
you're good. Yeah. So pretty much the reason that the 14th Amendment, as they describe it in the book, and this is the historical context as well, which is that they talk about it being that there are people in the side of the United States that are not people of the United States. What they specifically are calling out, which is like people that belong or are under the protection and rule and governance of the foreign countries, but are inhabiting the United States, such as dignitaries, ambassadors, all that kind of stuff. And it also explicitly calls out that the original intent of the 14th Amendment was never to grant people of that status who have children inside of the United States as now becoming American citizens, even though they were born here, because they are under the protection or not in servitude. They're represented or claimed by another nationality, effectively saying that you are of a different country, even though you were geographically born in this spot. You are not here because you are claimed by a different country. So it does get into all the semantics about like who's born here, are you from here, are you naturalized, do you have allegiance to another country, that kind of stuff. It very much explains it all out in what I would argue is legal terminology, but it's the correct technical terminology of the time as it was understood at the time as well. These are very good arguments that, by the way, are still being argued to this day about the interpretation of the 14th Amendment and whether or not our current interpretation is correct or incorrect based on the historical context.
Bro, I would love to get into a lot more of the stuff that Brendan talks about with legal definitions and the very precise use of words in like UCC 3 and just a whole bunch of stuff. He's very, very particular about legalese and all of this stuff, man. It's crazy, like the difference between person and people, between like promissory notes versus money versus currency. It is absolutely fantastic. And one of the things that he encourages all of his pickletarians, which it's his version of like hexicans, right? He encourages all pickletarians to become super, super, super competent in definitions of words and understanding what things meanings are and like knowing how to use them and eventually getting into not legislation, litigation to like use this knowledge to go and be a lawyer in fact rather than a lawyer in law, because anybody can be a lawyer in fact. Anyone can be can represent themselves, or can represent their ens legis, or can represent whoever gives them limited power of attorney or anything. Like you don't have to be a bar card holding lawyer to go to court and to speak to the judge and to do all this other stuff. The courts presume that all people are basically infant tiny children that don't know what they're doing when it comes to law, which is why they always grant or why they always say you have a right to an attorney, you have a right to this, that, or the other thing, is because the courts must presume that people don't know how the law goes, and so they presume that everyone is like basically a child and doesn't know how to do these things. But you can represent yourself and you can do all this stuff. And so the best way to do that is understand legal code and understand definitions and understand the meaning of words and precedents and all sorts of things. But anyways, we're getting really far from the summary. And real quick, I want to just shout out some of the other folks that have joined us. We have been joined by a wild SJ who appears. Good to see you, SJ. Welcome. Another fantastic and fine Hexican. We've had her on the show covering Sci-Vive. So it's good to see you, SJ. Glad that you could pop into book club tonight and say hi. We've also been joined by Mr. Moondog, who says, howdy, rowdies. He reminds us that he's going to be driving, so not a lot of typing and speaking from him tonight. But I always like hearing Moondog's thoughts. He's always got some excellent thoughts. So I hope you have a safe drive, broski, and that you take it easy. And then finally, we've been joined by Tam Tam, who says, hello, my lovelies. Hello to you too, Tam Tam. Welcome. #1 Pulse Chain and Hexico cheerleader in the space. We have indeed got an excellent crowd tonight. And we've got Moon-Pilled Rational Optics reminding us to repeal the 16th Amendment. Who's with him? I will say, I think that it's I can't remember if it's the 14th, 15th, and 16th Amendment that were created in response to slavery, or if it was 13, 14, 15. But I know that it was three of them.
I believe
were
it's 13,
created.
14, 15. 16
13, 14,
is
15?
something
Okay.
differently. Do you remember which one that is?
16th is income tax. Oh no, no, it's not. What is 16th?
16th is the direct election of senators, as opposed to senators being elected from amongst the congressmen.
Oh,
I'm going to be embarrassed if that's incorrect.
I mean, I don't know. I have no idea. So your guess is as good as mine. I don't know what the 16th Amendment. I know that the 19th is.
Nope,
women's
I'm
suffrage.
incorrect. That is federal income tax. Thank you, Moon-Pilled Rational Optics. What?
Oh, I was right.
What's the one I'm
Fuck
thinking of?
yeah. Hell yeah. Okay, federal income tax.
17.
Yeah, repeal the 16th.
I was off by 1.
Okay. Yep.
Damn.
Repeal the 16th. Do it. Do away with all this garbage.
My bad.
Oh, by the way, you want to know something? You want to know a fun fact? It is only U.S. citizens have to pay tax. U.S. nationals do not have to pay tax. State citizens do not have to pay tax. U.S. citizens are, and I'm probably getting some of this stuff wrong here, but because again, I've only been studying this content for about 3 or 4 weeks now. But state citizens do not have to pay income tax because they are not, or excuse me, citizen is the wrong word. U.S. national. Man, dang it! Now I'm getting all the definitions.
You're getting pretty close, but at the same time, you're also opening up the entire can of worms that is federalism.
Yeah, a U.S. citizen is an employee of the corporation that is titled the United States of America, which exists somewhere over in the District of Columbia. We don't know where exactly, but the United States of America is both a corporation as well as a big giant landmass. It is two distinct things. Whenever you see a court case where it is like the U.S. versus fucking Joe Schmo, right? The United States is considered a corporation and needs to be represented by a person, because the United States as a corporation in this sense is a person and needs to be represented in the court of law as having been, done damage by some other whatever the hell. So like only US citizens pay tax. So if you don't want to be a US citizen, then there's ways around that, and you don't have to pay tax if you're not a U.S. citizen. You could still be a U.S. national who is domiciled within the United States of America, but is not a citizen. Now you don't get franchised, you don't get the right to vote. But it's like, if you think the right to vote is useful or anything, then that might be something that's important. But anyways, all that to say, repeal the 16th. I'm a-okay about it. I am right there with you. Zenith is right there with you. And yeah. Oh, and by the way, we have an important clarification from Mr. Moondog. Slight correction. FYI, subsection: you are not always allowed to represent yourself pro se in felony, in felony, federal, or for your business in some states. And he found out the hard way this year. So there you go. I'm sorry to hear that you found that out, but I'm sorry to hear that you had a difficulty, but I'm glad to hear that you have learned something and you are sharing that knowledge with us, because that's fucking awesome. Thank you, sir. But this is good to know. After we repeal the 17th, we'll have the votes to repeal the 14th. Yes, there's many people that say that the 14th Amendment is not legitimate because the states only voted for the 14th because they were under duress, and they were said, if you don't vote in favor of the 14th Amendment, you don't get to join the Union. And so, like, because it was brought in under duress. That's a whole can of worms, and we do not have the time to go through that today. I still haven't even gone through the.
The TLDR on that one is that the duress is Reconstruction, aka the resolution of the Civil War, and reincorporating the Southern states, and it was kind of foisted upon them. But at the same time, you bring up a good point here, though, which is that you can argue about the originalities and the legality of everything over time, but at a certain point, after amount of time has passed, some things that may or may not have been legal at the time kind of were just incorporated in, and whether they benefited or were a detriment to the US, that's something that you can debate later on. One of the big ones of these is actually the Louisiana Purchase, which I want to say Jefferson was the president at the time of. Technically, he didn't have the power to make said purchase, but he did it anyways because it was such a massive boon to the United States that he was like, I got to capitalize on this when I can.
Yep.
So,
Yep. We're gonna fucking take it, boys. I don't have the authority, but we're fucking doing it. Now that is kind of a ballsy, awesome move, you know. And sometimes it works out really great, and sometimes it doesn't work out really great. So,
correct.
in any case, you're absolutely right. This will be a whole rabbit hole if we go down it. So I'm going to bring us back, and we're going to talk more about the other core concepts. So that was the first one, the two-tiered system of American citizenship. We've got people and we've got persons, aka we've got state citizens and we have U.S. citizens, people and persons respectively. The second core concept is about the philosophy of the American government, which brings up the debate of republic versus democracy. So the republic as the ideal. The United States is consistently defined as a constitutional republic and not a democracy. A republic is praised as a government of laws operated by elective representatives designed to protect individual rights from the tyranny of the majority. Democracy is a danger, or democracy as a danger. Democracy is characterized negatively as government of the masses, subject to passion, mob rule, and arbitrary decisions. Sounds awful interesting to our voting process as of late. Modern tools like the initiative and referendum are viewed as dangerous democratic experiments. It then talks about the separation of powers, the structure of the republic with its three branches of government, and the system of checks and balances is celebrated as the essential mechanism for preventing the concentration of power and preserving liberty. And then talks about the purpose of government, the primary role being defined as protecting individual rights, life, liberty, and property, and ensuring equality of opportunity, not providing for citizens' subsistence or ensuring equality of condition. So again, equality of opportunity, not equality of condition or equality of outcome. The third concept of the four in the book is about the American character and its foundations. And so this is where we get into like the pioneer and the Puritan roots with the ideal American character and its being traced back to the traits of the early settlers, how they had good religious faith. They had like stern will, self-reliance, tenacity, and reverence for family and race. And this character is presented as America's greatest asset. He then talks about the 4 I's. An individualistic government is said to cultivate 4 key traits: individuality, which is, distinct personal quality; independence, which is self-reliance; initiative, which is drive to innovate; and intelligence, which is your problem-solving capacity. It then talks about individualism versus collectivism, where individualism is championed as the source of American success, while collectivism, which is, equated with socialism, is condemned for killing ambition, confiscating property, and demanding loyalty to the state over loyalty to the individual. He then talks about the price of success, with the national and individual success is said to depend on 3 pillars, which is work, education, and ideals. So, labor, specialized knowledge, and having like high moral purpose. So then in the fourth part of the book, the fourth concept is the Picalitarian philosophy, which is the modern path to sovereignty. Now, Zenith was saying this is the last hour and a half of the 7.5 hour book. And I do think that there's a lot of important stuff in there. But anyways, I'll go ahead and describe it. So the goal of a Picalitarian, or the goal is to create more Picalitarians, which is an individual who seeks to achieve personal sovereignty and restore American Republic principles by mastering their internal world. Very similar to Hexicans, very similar to Bitcoiners, very similar to the Degens of the Degen Roundtable. It's all about like being the best version of yourself that you can be by mastering yourself. So the core principles are that this philosophy is built on a couple things. We've got the abundance mindset first and foremost, which is viewing abundance as a chosen mentality, not an actual physical reality. And the whole idea is you can eliminate fear and scarcity. There's a ton of rich people out there that don't have abundance mindset, despite all their wealth and all of their power. And then there's a ton of poor people out there that do have abundance mindset, despite their lack of actual like physical or power capital. So That's the first part. Next is mastery of communication. So this is like what we were talking about earlier with using precise definitions, having curiosity, and storytelling to dismantle limiting beliefs and increasing understanding. A lot of the stuff that we do in life is based on assumptions. And when you assume something, you make an ass out of you and out of me. So
Aha.
like this is super duper important. It is very important to know the meaning of things. It's very important to have agreement on definitions of words, and especially in the legal world. So like damn near everything that we operate on in life is based on assumptions, and it's based on like, what's the working solution. But like very little is based on like actual truth. If you ask someone what is the definition of a person versus what is the definition of people, most folks like I wouldn't even be able to really give you a good solid definition of that. So understanding things like shout out to fourth grade spelling and word usage and understanding and everything. Like I think that like that's the beginning bridge to this better world of mastering communications, because like without knowing what words mean, you can't really communicate very well. And if you use words incorrectly, then you contribute to miscommunication and misunderstanding, and all sorts of problems come from that. Next up, we've got internal validation, which is being performance obsessed rather than perception centric. So this derives self esteem from competence and benevolent action, not on external approval. So this is about how I feel after the stream is over, based on how I did, rather than by the view count or by the number of likes that we get. I gotta say that like book club gets the least number of likes and it gets the least number of views of all the crypto stuff that we do, of everything that we do on this show. But I gotta tell you, book club is my favorite part of the DGen roundtable. It is the best. It is the learning. It's where the value is, the sauce is. And unfortunately, like where the value and where the sauce is doesn't always get the external validation. So that's my own little example of that. But um that's yeah, that's it for internal validation. There's your guys' example. And then finally, we've got strategic action is the final core principle, which is about viewing problems as creative challenges and using logic and tenacity to correct ignorance and challenge bullies, all while maintaining a sense of fun and beauty. So this is about not taking like stuff too seriously. It's not about like, oh, I succeed or I fail. It's more about like I make an improvement or I learn and thereby increase my education and thereby improve. It's all mentality. It's all about like you're going to be winning no matter what. And um it's about helping other people out that are around you and crushing the people that are doing wrong and spreading misinformation and spreading ignorance and misinformation is probably a bad word choice for me there, but like people that go around purposefully trying to deceive others so that way they can get more power, versus people that are going around just operating under ignorance or stupidity or whatever. But anyways, the ultimate purpose of these four core principles: abundance mindset, mastering communication, internal validation, and strategic action, is to become a shining light of sanity and skills, inspiring an artistic renaissance and creating a network of self-reliant individuals who can lead the restoration of true self-governance. And this is what the last final part of the book is about: becoming a picklitarian. It's all about creating a whole bunch of competent people that can change the world to be a better place. It's not about like, oh, let's make a community and circle jerk each other and live on our island out in the middle of nowhere. It's like, no, this is about you need to become a beacon of hope and prosperity and knowledge and action in the world that you live in, and do your best to market these ideas and do your best to live this example and proselytize and just change the world around you to be better, because without that sort of thing, America collapses. And that is the ultimate guide to the most beautiful women in the world. The United States of America is ideally becoming, in Brendan's words, a beacon of picklitarian. So that is the extended summary of the book. Zenith, what do you think, broski? Did I miss anything? Is there anything in there that we that needs covering?
No, that's pretty much everything. If I was going to try to add to it, I'd say that kind of the flow of the book, especially the original manual that takes up like the first 2/3 of the book, is that it starts off with trying to give you the mission of what it is. And it starts off by saying that an informed populace is necessary for having people who are actually involved in the political system. And that's what it tries to talk about. And that gives you the premise for why it talks about everything else. It gives you the premise of why they talk about going through who could originally vote. It was the white land holding native born folks. And then it talks about the incorporation of everyone else in the 14th Amendment, and then even gets into the old English jurisprudence for a bit there, and then moves on into some of the larger topics. But there's also other stuff sprinkled in there that it seems kind of random, but if you take it as this was a military manual written in 1926, it does not shock me that it was kind of some of the stuff I heard like when I did Boy Scouts for a year. Like they have a full chapter on the importance of the American flag and how to treat it properly for honors as both a military member and also as a civilian, and gives you very clear distinction of like, here are all the different honors and customs that we give to the flag, and how you treat other flags when joining it with the United States flag, and how none should be above the other. But if you're just in the US, the American flag should always be the highest or the most prominent in any sort of procession. You never put anything on top of it. You never wear it for decoration. You never embroider on stuff. And then also the meaning behind it. So this is a good like classic civics course pretty much. And honestly, it's good. I make reference to the Starship Troopers thing because does it kind of evoke the feeling of the scenes? Yes. But also at the same time, I think this book actually dives into one of the questions which has largely been absent from American discourse for a while, which is why it also starts off with the idea of okay, there were limited voting people, and then it gets into discussion of people versus persons, and it doesn't specifically call it out, I don't think, but it definitely alludes to the fact that if you have rights, you also have duties. If you have the ability to vote, you also have responsibilities as well. So I like it from that standpoint, and I think it definitely raises a good question about like, why are we voting? Who should be able to vote? I understand that in the early 20th century, 1900s, if you will, there was the fight for women's suffrage as well. So if you ask me, I would also spitball in here, but I also say that part of the reason why this manual maybe was not adopted and carried for a long time was because it does actually raise the taboo question of should everyone be able to vote? And I think it does a good job of not explicitly saying like, no, everyone should not vote, but being able to point out like, if you're going to vote, you need to be an informed populace that is not merely seeking to be a rent seeker or just take from the public coffers, but you understand that you are a part of something greater and you have a duty and an obligation to leave this place better than you found it.
And I think that it ties in really well with a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about in the Starship Troopers, which is like so fortuitous that we got these two books right next to each other. Because I do think that
they work.
It works really well, works super well. And I do think that, voting should be taken very seriously, and it's not. Voting's tossed around like a fucking like a cheap prostitute, man. Like, anybody can go vote. You don't need to qualify to do voting. You don't need to present IDs in many places. You can just show up. You can mail in as many ballots as you want. Like it's a irreverent process. I think that voting should be difficult. Voting should be costly. Voting should have some sort of like very serious treatment, and I just think that there's too many people that absent-mindedly check a fucking box on a ballot they found in the mail, or they go to a place and they pick a person because their name sounds cool, or because it's got a special letter next to their name. It's like, oh, they got a D, or oh, they got an R, I better vote for this person. It's like, nah, man, should be much more difficult. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. But yeah, those are some good points, Z. I want to give you the opportunity before we hop into the questions here. Was there a part of the book that that stood out to you, either super positive or super negative? I know that we had some communication in the notes telegram about some of the less awesome thoughts we had on the book, but I want to start it off positively. Do you think there's something that this book did really, really well, or something that stuck out to you?
Yeah, I'll leave the Pickletarian stuff for the end. I think there's a lot of good stuff there, but I do also have a small critique of it. But the part of this book that I really enjoyed the most is that this is a book that's willing to have that conversation that I mentioned previously about like the idea that everyone should be able to vote. It's kind of stupid. And it really gets into that because it talks about the idea of liberty versus citizenship. And it goes into detail specifically about like this slavery in the United States and the expansion of rights and liberty to people. Liberty is as the book defines it, is the ability to live your life in accordance with how you please, as long as it doesn't, as long as you're not imposing yourself on other people effectively. But it also talks about citizenship as something that's different from that. Granted that to have citizenship, you must also have liberty effectively. Otherwise, it is just the state. So the fact that it really tries to differentiate between these two concepts, I think, is something that's missing from a lot of modern dialogue. And it's something very important because, like you said, it gives a lot of gravitas or just like weight to what's going on, which is that, is liberty the thing that humans yearn for? Yes, absolutely. Is it the end all be all state of everything going on? And the answer is absolutely not. And they do kind of get into the Starship Troopers definition of citizenry, or why they have citizenry versus just the populace effectively. And it does really appeal to the idea that if you are a person that is going to be involved in the political process or government, they don't explicitly say it like Starship Trooper does, where they say that like politics and governance is the ultimate use of force, but they definitely allude to it, which is the fact that government has the ability to do that, and it has the ability to intervene itself in your life in so many different ways. So they do
He
specifically
does actually.
does
he does say, yeah, he does say it's about force. There's actually a very specific part where he talks about, like, and this is one of my quotes that I threw up in the Telegram, that men get to vote because they also have to go to war, and women don't get to vote,
yeah,
and they're therefore not required to go to war. Like, they don't have to be drafted or something along those lines. And that was one of the parts of the book when they were talking about like the suffrage and all the other stuff.
Gotcha.
So they did have it. They did have
Okay.
that voting is essentially use of violence.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Yeah. I think that again, it's the reason why I like this is because I feel like this is discourse that's definitely missing from the discourse now, or it feels like specifically repressed or cut out. I would say it's definitely a taboo topic, especially as long as I've been alive, which is that this is kind of just something that's being taken for granted, is that one man, one vote, no matter who you are or what you're doing. But there's so many other things, which is the original way that we did this, which you have to be white, born in America, and a landowner, is that a little too exclusive? Yes. Are those specific things that are now immutable characteristics and should be kind of protected against? I would also argue yes. But at the time, it was the answer to the question, which Starship Troopers really presents, which is the person that should be able to be involved in the political process is the person that thinks beyond themselves, thinks about for the well-being of the country in accordance with its ideals. And that's something that's very, very hard to actually put into specific qualifications to be able to get to vote. And it's because there's no good answer for it. I think it's why we've kind of arrived at the system that we are now. And I think it's why they created the system that they did originally in the beginning, is that it is a very intangible ideal that you can't really test, you can't really show, you can't really like qualify through payment or some sort of involvement. But it's a concept that I think a lot of people understand. It's just hard to put on paper.
So of the four concepts that we talked about, which one stands out to you the most? So there's so I'm basically asking you of the four parts of the book, right? There's the history, there's the citizenship theory,
Yeah, we have
there's the philosophy.
The two-tiered system, philosophy of American government, American character and its foundations, and the geopolitical philosophy.
Yeah.
I think that the philosophy of American government, republic versus democracy, that is a very, very important one. It is not the one that really tickled me the most. And that would definitely be the first one, which is the idea of like two-tiered system of American citizenship. I know it is a crazy, ludicrous thing to say in the year of our Lord 2025, but at the same time, though, I think it's
it crazy?
Really,
what makes it crazy? If there's a whole bunch of people doing something retarded, and there's a couple people
would try to scorn you for having such a conversation because they believe it's outside of the oh gosh, what's the name for the window?
So why should we qualify to public discourse? You know, like if everyone is doing something retarded and a couple people are doing something smart, then everyone calls the people doing the smart thing crazy. That's my clap back to
Yeah,
that thought.
the counter to that one is thank you. By the way, Tarnvog, good to see you. Thank you. Overton window. That was the word I'm looking for.
Oh yes.
The clap back to what you said is that, well, if that's the case, then the people that are sexually attracted to toasters and want to find ways and more people to talk about banging toasters get together and then believe that they're not crazy, even though you can you can definitely point out that, like, look, this is not normal, nor is it okay.
Okay.
If you start qualifying everything that way, then you kind of start getting to moral relativism, which is the idea that as long as it's okay with my moral compass, you shouldn't really be against it. And it goes back to, again, founding ideals, which is, gosh, I want to say it was Jefferson, which is the one that said the United States Constitution is for a moral and religious people. It's the I know I'm getting into a bit of a really deep tangent on this one, but that is the differentiation between the American Revolution and the French Revolution, which was kind of done through Rousseauian ideals of libertarianism and liberty, which is that the American Foundation was done under the idea that the Constitution and liberty only works for a moral and just people, or moral and religious people, excuse me. What does that mean? Well, it implies that morality and some sort of religiosity, doesn't say it has to be the same one. What it appeals to is that there is something greater outside of mankind that determines what morality is. What Rousseau and the French Revolution got into is saying that morality is pretty much dictated by the rule of the governed who have the right to determine how they are governed. It pretty much says that American Foundation says that morality is dictated by something higher than yourself or some sort of idea of what is sacred. Rousseau gets to the idea that society is this thing beyond nature or natural law theory, which is that as we've entered into the social contract and we have the ability and the right to rule amongst ourselves, pretty much whatever we say is good is good. So when you get to that, then you kind of get towards that slippery slope of, well, whatever we say is good. Well, we say that everyone should have free stuff and everyone should have kind of all these things provided to them, calling them rights, even though they're not the older, more correct definition of rights. I understand I'm missing a few other philosophers along the slide there, but the main split really is there between Rousseau and the American founding. So
your original, I don't know if you were going on the tangent or the original question where you were talking about, like, you liked the Republic versus the Democratic.
Oh, so that was that's why I like the two-tiered system. The rant I just went on was the answer to your question of why should we conform to what the masses say, even if the masses are incorrect. You are correct in the sentiment, which is that just because
we should at least think about it.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
You should definitely think about it, but at the same time, you can arrive at a logical and correct conclusion. Granted, just because the masses dictate something does not mean it's correct. At the same time,
that's my point. Yeah.
At the same time, though, the idea of the Overton window and kind of common or having a consensus around it, you can look back at history and see what has worked for humanity and what has not worked. And it's usually a pretty good blueprint about what you should probably strive towards, especially if it's led to human flourishing and not human suffering.
Yeah.
So that was the answer to the question that you posed to me.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I got you. Well, so earlier you had said it sounded crazy for us to be having this conversation about the original
or like what citizenship.
Yeah. So can you go further, like skipping past the crazy stuff? We'll presume that part didn't happen. What were your thoughts?
I thought it was good, and I'll bring up a concept that the author talks about in the book, is the idea of residency versus domicile. The author defines residency as just like a place that you are, but he specifies that domicile is the place where you call home and you intend to return back to, no matter where you may reside. And that is kind of one of the core concepts behind who's an American and who is not. Do you claim to be a part of this country, or do you just kind of claim to be here? And as part of that, he also gets into the idea, which was very prevalent during the founding, which is that states' rights were a lot bigger of a thing, and that states were part of the union as a whole. And he really gets into the idea that you mentioned previously, which is, are you a state citizen or are you a federal citizen? That delineation has been absolutely erased today. Everyone, I would argue there's a good point for it. And it definitely originates from the Civil War, which is, gosh, it's like the old quote, which is that before the Civil War, they said the United States are, and then afterwards they said the United States is, implying it is a plurality of a single thing versus no, we are just a single thing now. This kind of stuff is definitely, it's kind of long gone, but at the same time, it harkens back to a lot of really core American things, which is like federalism, states' rights, and then the idea that the states are supposed to be their own little like microcosms of democracy inside of the larger republic. So these concepts really aren't talked about, and they're largely scorned by kind of like the I guess the custom and society of the time, I would say. And I know I sound like an absolute boomer here, but that's kind of like who I am at heart, which is that we've been doing all this reading, and I've been doing stuff outside of this as well, and trying to really get back to the core of like, I guess, politics and the political and governance and all that. And we are a long way removed from it. So it's refreshing to hear these ideas that really are foundational being brought up again. But at the same time, there's also a realistic element, which is you got to understand where you are in reality as opposed to just the theoretical ideas. So these are fun theoretical ideas that we should definitely, in my opinion, get back to. But at the same time, you got to figure out and track the course to actually get back there. And that starts at the place that you are today. And as we are today, these are things that we don't really talk about because we're really focused on a lot of other issues. So yes,
Well,
I like
yeah.
the old stuff. The old stuff feels good to me. I like talking about it. In
Yeah.
case you haven't
What do you-
noticed.
But the bastardization of the republic by the gerrymandering that goes on, and the drawing of the lines, and the
What do you
craziest,
mean
like
by that?
the amusing squiggles that people will draw to get like to get people into, I think it's the House, right? The House is what they do gerrymandering for, because you can't gerrymander for the Senate. But like,
Congressional districts, yeah.
yeah, when you look at maps of places and you see that, like, oh, check this out, many New England states have like a 40% Republican like representation of their states, whatever the hell, but they have 0 seats in the House of Representative. Or like you look at cities that they split up, and like the crazy shapes that they make to include or exclude groups of people, so that that things happen. Like I'm not saying that it always happens, but I'm saying that, like, because it does happen, and because it's like there's some weird fucking rules that I totally don't understand, but like I'm doing a very bad job of describing it. But like, there's a lot of the ways that the republic has been bastardized. There's a lot of ways that democracy has been bastardized, and it's like it is nostalgic to look back and to read this book and to see all the good examples of how this stuff works, and then to like compare and contrast it today, where it's like, oh, look at these guys giving themselves bread and circuses and redrawing maps, and basically using C-SPAN as the newest reality TV show, where you get to watch one team yell at the other team, and then everyone at home's like, yeah, I'm winning, when in reality the same thing that was going to happen already is what happens up on Capitol Hill. And
Well, if anything, it's just the most recent iteration of people learning from other people's inventions, which is that Twitch became popular, and then clip farming was a thing, and then the politicians were like, oh, I can just use C-SPAN to clip farm and then use them for political advertisements. By the way, political gerrymandering, I really don't care about it, because in my opinion, it's really just a surface level thing to scream about. But at the root of it, it's just the exercise of political power and political will. It's your classic idea of it's who gets to determine the rules of the game. And while
Yeah.
if you're able to determine the rules of the game, why would you not use them in a way to benefit yourself if you've been duly elected to power? In an ideal world, would it happen? No, it wouldn't. But again, to be realistic, it's just an exercise of political power that's been gained through whatever means it was gained by, usually through legitimate processes. And then it's just a tactic to use as opposed to the underlying issue. But you did bring up the main point of this original section, or the second section, which is republic versus democracy. And the way that the author describes it is that the republic was created as the conglomeration of states to get together and to come together as a country and vote on things. Democracy is a tool that was used to help give the will of the people a voice in how they are governed by electing the people to best represent themselves. But the chapter also does a really good job of getting into the ideas of what's the difference between these two. The idea is that like our form of government is the worst, except for all of the rest of them. That's kind of what this comes down to, which is that, like you talked about previously, democracy is the idea of you just need 51% and you can kind of do whatever the heck you want. it will absolutely trample over the other 49%. And because of this, you do get things like mob rule and just bad ideas that latch on but seem trendy and hot at the time suddenly become dominant. The Republic was the bulwark against that, which is that you're supposed to be electing the people who are going to be the best equipped to handle this kind of stuff. And that also harkens back to the mission statement of the book, which is that you're trying to create an informed citizenry that understands what's going on here and actually has the weight of everything behind all the decisions they make when they elect people. So to kind of get to what we have today, I would agree with you that we've kind of definitely gone towards the route of more democracy than republic, which is why I said that I was in favor of repealing the 17th Amendment, even though I got the number wrong. The reason I say that is because when you have direct election of the senators, you are changing everything to direct election. The whole point of having election of the senators was to have, again, some sort of bulwark against just the tyranny of the masses, or democracy, if you will. Because if you just have democracy, then everyone has the same incentive system, which is, I want to get reelected. If you have non-direct election of senators, then what you have is you've taken away an incentive for a group of people who have equal sway or power in the House, which is that you do have the group, which is the congressmen who are directly elected and do have that kind of incentive to keep getting reelected. If you have the senators, they are chosen from the congressmen, then theoretically you are trying to insulate that effect going on. But we got rid of that a while ago. So we lost
Do you think that
the bulwarks.
Do you think that like the criticism in the book is fair, or is it like an idealized version of some sort of republic that never really actually existed? What do you think?
I would say that is a pretty fair critique. It is more aspirational than description, which is that this was the original intent, and then we kind of have to deal with the consequences of the real world instead of the intent. So we're ruled by the letter of the law instead of the intent of the law. And again, I think they make the same argument when it comes to the 14th Amendment, which is that the intent was to fix the United States and get everyone back and involved in liberty, and then start extending the power of people to be involved in the political process. But ultimately, the reality of what happened is that we're now in the situation where anyone who is born on U.S. soil is just automatically a U.S. citizen, regardless of if they belong to a different country or not. So yeah, it's a very fair critique to say that it's kind of idealizing republicanism, or by republicanism, I mean the system of a republic, and then trying to also play up kind of the downsides of democracy. But at the same time, the reason that this part is in the book is because it is an accurate description of the conversations that were going on during the Continental Congresses when they were trying to draft the Constitution and ratify it. These are the arguments that were being made at the time before the game was played. So it's important to understand what people were thinking and why.
Mm-hmm. Man, I'm scrolling through the Telegram right now, and you had a part in here about truth and also judgment, and then the facts versus truth. So I'm curious why you defined truth in these three. So in the Telegram, by the way, folks, you can join at t.me/DGen Book Club. But you labeled truth with three definitions. We've got agreement of thought, eventual verification, and consistency of thought within itself. And then you went on to define the difference between a fact versus truth, right? So fact being a pleading statement or an incidence, and then truth being legal
incidents.
Yeah, and then truth being legal principle which governs facts and their defense. Can you kind of sort of explain what you meant in here a little bit further?
I did not mean anything by those. Those are what the book said in the Pickeltarian chapter, especially towards the end.
Yes.
I think that these are odd things to say, in my personal opinion. I think that, in particular, the Pickeltarian chapter, it does a pretty good job of giving a prescriptive idea of how to live life and good core principles to live by. But then we get towards the later half of the chapter and we kind of start tripping on ourselves when we get to these ideas. And then ultimately, what is the conclusion of that chapter itself? So I guess to give you my synopsis of what that chapter was, the idea is that it's kind of a combination of, where did I put it? it's a combination of Stoicism, Socrates, Starship Troopers, the Founding Fathers, Buddha, abundance, and minimalism. So this is definitely the chapter where this is the author talking, and this is the author putting his own words to paper, as opposed to everything that came before this, which is really from that original Army Manual of 1926. The reason I say it's these things is, one, Stoicism, because the guy very much is like, you are in control of your mind, you're not in control of everything else, and how you control your mind is how you can interact with in the world. Socrates, I pointed to the Socratic method, because one of the things that they argue is good, or what Pickletarians are about, is childlike curiosity, always asking why, always digging deeper, always trying to ask questions and get more into the weeds with things. Starship Troopers is because there's a reference here to their original end statement, which is that citizenship really should be of people who are pointed towards a goal that is greater than themselves, aka the betterment of society, or the group that they claim to be their society. I said it was the Founding Fathers because they also have a realistic perspective of the world and the world around them and everything that is going on. In similar way to the Founding Fathers designed the Constitution and our system of government in a way that ambition checks ambition, which is that they acknowledged what human nature was, and instead of trying to suppress it, they actually kind of engaged it or allowed it to work with itself instead of trying to work against human nature. But this is why we get the three different branches of government, because the idea is that any one branch of government has a way to kind of check the other two. And theoretically, the only way that you get things moved along in this form of governance, if there is actually cohesion and agreement on issues, and also an adherence to the base principles. That's specifically why the judiciary is there. Buddha is because the guy definitely talks about karma a lot, and it's the idea of like, you should just try to do good things. But at the same time, if you want to take this a step further, or this could also just be me reading my ideas into this, which is that it goes back to the idea of having something that is actually sacred, or that there is something that is above humans. Humans are not God. There is actually a God that is above you that gives you the rules to live by. Abundance is pretty straightforward. The guy argues some stuff that we've probably heard a lot, especially in the last 10 years, which is that operate out of a place of abundance, which is that the answer is never scarcity. The answer is usually always abundance. But then at the same time, there is also a slight balancing principle on this one, which is where you get minimalism. Minimalism is where he specifically talks about, like, look, you can try to have a lot of junk, but it's just a lot of junk you have to upkeep. If you're trying to do all this other stuff, why are you so worried about the junk in your house? So there's that.
I do think that abundance and minimalism kind of tie into each other, because like when you have minimalism of things, you have an abundance of freedom of thought. The more objects that you own, the more houses, the more cars, the more women, the more knickknacks, Xboxes, TVs, phones, dirt bikes, everything requires a certain amount of your time, and it requires a certain amount of your thought energy, your attention, your occasionally even money. And the more things that you have, the more you're at least in part tied down or obligated, or you have some sort of responsibility, if you don't want your thing to decay into nothingness, to give some of your time, some of your energy, some of your attention to these different things. So if you have a whole bunch of things, you're actually putting yourself in a position of indentured slavery. So by being minimalistic, you're having an abundance of opportunity. You're having an abundance of mental freedom, of your time, of everything. And the less things that you own, the more free that you are.
I agree with the philosophy side of what you're talking about here for sure. But when it comes to what I'm trying to just describe as what I read in the chapter, is that the chapter does also talk about physical abundance, specifically when it comes to competence. That's one of the big things that they stress out of Pickletarianism, is that you got to be competent in what you do. And what that does is it gives you abundance of skills, opportunity, and then also resources as well. And resources are the physical connection, which is why I say that minimalism is the balancing of those. Because minimalism is obviously physical. So
excellent.
All right, so that's my bull case for the Pickletarianism. To answer your question, we now get into the bear case, which is where I get to these two sections where the guy talks about truth and then facts versus truth. Okay. He says that truth is three things. It is an agreement of a thought, eventual verification of said thought, and then consistency of that thought within itself. So you have agreement on the thing, which is consensus. It is that truth is something that is agreed upon by different individuals. Eventual verification is kind of where we get towards like more scientific method kind of stuff, which is that you can verify that the thing is what it is. And then lastly, you have consistency of the thought within itself. This is just logical consistency. This is that we have the ability to rationalize and think about things. Therefore, if it is not logically consistent within itself, it is not truth. This is kind of converse to facts, and the author doesn't get as much into fact as he does truth. But the idea of a fact is pretty much just like, here's my quote, is a pleading of statement or incidents. And what that means is like a thing happened, a thing exists, I saw a thing, and it's there, it exists. Truth, this is done in the same breath in the book, by the way. He argues that truth is the legal principle which governs facts and their defense. I thought that this is a very odd thing to say in the chapter when he very specifically talked about like a bunch of other very concrete foundational things. This kind of erodes it, in my opinion. This is what I would argue is a very pessimistic view of truth and the legal systems that govern them. This is kind of along the ideas of like history is written by the victors, truth is what the law says it is, or truth is what the power says that it is. This does start what I believe is kind of the ultimate rabbit hole or unwinding that the last chapter gets into. I like the first 2/3 of the chapter. The last 1/3 of the chapter kind of undermines itself. And this is why I say that. Because we just spent a lot of time about like having good foundations, thinking for yourself, being willing to ask questions, and then also being to stick up for yourself as well. But then it kind of goes down this rabbit hole of saying, what is truth? Truth is just whatever the powers that be determine that it is. It is who the best lawyer won at the end of the day says. And it's like, well, if we are a Picklitarian and we are having to deal with these things, we should always kind of just be questioning everything. Everything is ultimately malleable. And it eventually kind of, if you take it to its conclusion, it really argues that if you don't think you're wrong, never admit that you're wrong and continue the arguments going nowhere, claiming that everything is everything and nothing at the same time. And you get to this weird sense of like nihilism where you're like, oh, what is truth? Truth is made up. Nothing exists. Everything is just concepts imposed to us by force. And it's like, okay, now you really lost me. Now you've spiraled out of control.
This is amusing because this part of the book, like, I didn't even like, I don't even remember this. I guess it just did. It just zoom went like, but I could, because I've read this book twice now already, and it just like that whole thing just kind of like didn't stick. So I'm curious to hear more though.
So one of the things that he actually alludes to earlier in the chapter is the idea of be like water. It's the Sun Tzu Art of War, be what you need to be, where you need to be, even a little bit of 48 Laws of Power in there. But then it doesn't. It kind of gets the idea of like never admit defeat, never admit that you're wrong, never admit that the other person is right, always try to twist the facts, that kind of stuff. And it just seems very antithetical to me to have this part in the book when the first good chunk of the book is just really good foundational ideas, giving a description of America and our governing processes and the ideas behind them. And then also like civic duty and citizenship and that stuff. And then we get to this, which it's more of just like tactical. It's more of how to never lose an argument. And ultimately, if you really stick to this kind of thinking, you end up nowhere because you can go nowhere. If everything is made up and nothing exists, then you can do nothing because nothing exists. It's not very practical from like a world building perspective of giving you the power to build things and go out and accomplish things, because it ultimately says that no matter what you do, it's all worthless. So then the question becomes, okay, if everything is worthless, why do anything at all?
I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think that you might be like seeing the forest for the trees, and like I wouldn't take the words themselves too seriously, because it's like it is all bullshit, but we live in the world of bullshit. So like learn how to use the bullshit. This is the bullshit that is like accepted by everyone. So it is like the truth and whatnot. But like you as a person can manipulate this stuff yada yada yada. That would be my like really really vague pushback. Like I think that it's like the two things can exist at the same time. Because I have an abundance of I don't give a fuck kind of, you know.
That's it's not an
But
argument though.
yeah. Like it's just my that's my sentiment, my feeling. I don't think I can put it into very good words, but that would be I guess my pushback if put into words would be like, are you taking it a little bit too seriously?
I don't think I'm taking it too seriously because this is the part of the book that is a prescription on how to live life. So
Fair enough.
it seems like this is arguably one of the most serious parts of the book in my opinion, which is why I said like I like so much of this, but then it just unravels itself at the end. One of the things that's actually slightly inconsistent with this part of the book and the previous part of the book from the Army Manual is that one of the things that they bring up previously is the four eyes is intelligence. In that part, they define intelligence as problem-solving ability. In this part of the book, they define intelligence explicitly. They define intelligence as the application of curiosity, aka the willingness to ask questions. So
Yeah.
you have two different things here. I agree that both of the concepts are very important, which is that being able to problem solve and think outside of the box or think non-linearly and be able to find alternate solutions, that definitely is a part of intelligence. Intelligence is simply asking questions. That's curiosity for sure. And curiosity, I would argue, is also a very, very important thing to have because if you don't have curiosity, you're not willing to seek things out, which goes back to another one of the eyes, which is initiative. So curiosity, I would argue, is more of the initiative part of things. But
Fair.
if it's saying that intelligence is something to be aspirational here and intelligence is simply asking questions, it gets more of this is why I say it does get down that rabbit hole of intelligence is just asking the questions in a way to dissect other people's arguments if you don't like it as a way of ultimately getting back to what you want. So I think that this is definitely more of like a power tactic as opposed to the part of where he says like talking about truth. Truth is very clearly defined as different parts of the book, which is that certain things are true and immutable and have specific characteristics. When we get to this part, it's saying that no, truth is whatever force says that it is. So, like, again, I would completely just get rid of this chunk, point back to everything you talked about, because I think it's all fantastic. But this part really this is where you get into those arguments with people who are like, 2 + 2 is 5. And you're like, no, it's 4. I understand that you're doing a hypothetical, theoretical question about 2 + 2 = 5. And it's like, how do we know these things? Because they're observable, they're verifiable, they're repeatable, they're immutable. These things cannot be changed. Therefore, that is truth. And it also, it's frustrating to me because the guy does specifically talk about like definitions are important and then also specifically refers to common use definition, which is that the way that a word is most commonly used and understood by whatever populace at the time is the way that you should just use these words as they are. If you're using them for like an alternate definition, you got to be explicit about that kind of stuff. So it kind of the idea that you can redefine everything goes against the other thing, which is that no, that there is a specific definition which is most commonly understood.
I think they both exist. I don't know. I think something
one is
beautiful.
One is a
Go ahead.
concept. One is a concept. The other actually exists. The 2 + 2 = 5 argument. I understand it is an argument which is saying that we perceive the world in a specific way. What if our perception is warped? Well, that may be the case. And then it also implies that there's some sort of alternative universe where that is the reality for that one. But the recognition is that the reality we exist in is the reality that we occupy and we must work within. You can have the theoretical discussion about what if things were different? What if our perception is not the way things are on a different way? But within our perception, you can find fact, you can find truth, and you can find things that are verifiable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's like we use our perception, which is oftentimes flawed, to find the things that are consistent, and that is like the truth or something along those lines, right?
Yeah. I guess to give you the other kind of half of the argument that they make is that it's the idea of like if it takes the idea that a smart man is someone who understands that they know very little or close to nothing. This is kind of taking that a step further past the point of no return, which is that you know nothing, you will never know anything. Therefore, if you know nothing, then you're arguing with nothing about nothing. It's like, okay,
Very
you gotta
nihilistic.
you exactly. You gotta draw the floor somewhere. You can say that these things are sort of aspirational, like humility is, I would argue, a very important thing. But at the same time, confidence is also an important thing. You might think that they're at odds with each other, or they're opposites, but at the same time, the balance of the two, or even having both, is important. But it's the idea that if you take humility too far, it is that you believe that like you're worthless and nothing. It's like no. You got to understand that you have a baseline. We got
I
something
love
from
that.
Moondog here. I want to pull this up.
Yes, go ahead.
Moondog is saying most intelligence recognized in arguments is the deconstructive and repackaging kind. True creative intelligence is neglected by default, e.g., 2 + 2 often equals 5 after a baby in nature. Most intelligence recognized in arguments is the deconstructive and repackaging kind. Deconstructive and repackaging. Okay. So it sounds like you're saying the ability to understand complicated ideas and then repackage them in ways that are understandable by people that don't think as abstractly. True creative intelligence is neglected by default. If you could elaborate on that part, I would love to hear that. True creative intelligence is neglected by default.
Man, I love you, Moondog. We often need a Moondog translator.
Yeah.
I love that like your words make me think though, broski. This is good.
For sure.
I also want to say, Z, back to your point earlier, that the thing that I keep coming back to and thinking, and this is from Shakespeare, specifically Hamlet, is that nothing is either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. And I was thinking this because it's like this particular part of the book had a very real and meaningful thing for you, and I just like glossed over it and it didn't hit, and it's just like totally gone and basically means nothing to me. So it's like it really is indicative of like thinking makes it so. So like, is it real? Is it not real? Yes, this part of the book exists. And what is the effect it has on the world? Nothing. Versus like everything, or maybe not everything, but like not serious at all. Didn't even think about it, just like consumed it and went right out of on my way to probably, do more tower knocking over or whatever I was doing at the time while I was listening to the book. Versus like this is a very long section of this book club where we're committed to just this thought and just this idea. And it is amusing to me that it's like we are the ones that determine the value that goes into the words, goes into the concepts, goes into the things, whatever they might be. And so it just reminds me of the core argument that it is both the most important thing and it is also completely unimportant and completely like not real. And it's just like, haha, look at that. My what is the word ambivalence? Would that be appropriate versus like the like my 50 Shades of Gray versus Zenith's Black and White, or I don't even know. I'm not making very good analogies. I'm almost done with this bottle of wine though. By the way.
The gray versus black and white, I don't think is correct, but I think ambivalence is a good word for it.
Mhm.
Yeah. I tell you what, there is another part of the book that I do actually really like. It's a smaller section, but there is specifically a chapter where the guy talks about kind of historical figures or important figures from the history of the US. And they start this off by saying that you can tell a lot by a society based on the stories and legends that they tell of the great men of their society. And in this one, they talk about some of the stories. Obviously, we get into like George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, but he also specifically includes Lewis and Clark in this one as well.
Oh,
and
yeah, that was cool.
It's a very cool story describing the charter that he was given to go to the Rockies, see where the mouth of the Mississippi is, and go over the Rockies and find where the other side pours out in the Pacific, which they ultimately did. And it's a very, very long, arduous, but ultimately cool adventure. And the reason that the author included this one is very much the pioneer spirit that you mentioned, which is it is the people that are willing to go forge the untamed and out there and do what other people are unwilling to do in order to push the situation further and push themselves and push the progress of the nation. This is something that they talk about when I can't remember if it was they were describing Lewis's military days, where they actually took a fort when they did the unthinkable, which is that they took like a small company and they actually trudged through the swamps and all the backwaters with only the gear and provisions on the back. And because the enemy thought that that no one would ever be physically capable of doing this, and they proved them wrong, that ultimately was the key to their strategic success in overtaking a fort.
Yeah.
So, but to not belabor the point, I think that the key thing here was that you can tell a lot about the ideals of a nation based on the stories that they tell about the men they revere. And I think that, granted, this part of I can't remember if this is, there definitely is a bit of filling in the blanks by the author on this part, but the book was written in 1926. Realistically, a lot of the only other stuff that came before this primarily was World War I, or the Great War at the time as they knew it, because they thought it would be the war to end all wars. I don't remember getting a whole lot of that, but they definitely talk a lot about the founding of the country, the Civil War era as well, and then also the people pretty much between the Constitution being ratified and then the time period as well. It was older. It's not the more modern stuff. And when I say modern, I'm pretty much referring to anything pretty much from like 1890 towards when it was written, and even today if you extrapolate it further. So I think if you wanted to use this argument about, you can tell the nation by the stories of the men that they tell. We tell a lot of stories about people that were pre-1900. Post-1900, I think there's a lot more debate, arguably because society bloomed through industrialization. Therefore, we have a massive expansion of the population, and it's kind of harder to pinpoint these single individuals. But at the same time, I think that you could also use that argument as a way to pinpoint when you think the country kind of started to deviate from the original ideals and evolved into what it is today.
Yeah, the individualism versus the collectivism.
Yes, sir.
That's another thing that he talks about a lot. Man, so like I really do think that part of the book is timeless. If you had to guess, what do you think they're going to be talking about that he was also talking about in this book that's still going to be discussed 50 years from now? You know, like, are they still going to be talking about Lewis and Clark and about the American founders and the Republican democracy, like the beginning stuff in the book? Or you think they're going to be talking more about the more modern philosophy stuff, that like the Pictarianism and yada yada? What do you think is going to be have the most longevity in this work?
You're asking me to pull out the crystal ball here. Okay. In order to do so, let's take stock of the situation on the ground as it is.
Yeah.
The definition of the 14th Amendment has come back into question in the last 2, 3, 4 years.
Uh-huh.
This was something that was very, very like fringely talked about previously and not widely argued about, but it's definitely been driven as a major point now. Whether or not it persists, I think that depends on whether other things will become of greater impact, or I guess higher up in the hive mind of our collective society, if you will. I think that the debate between democracy versus a republic and collective versus individual ideals and values, or what is the purpose of the government to benefit the most, I guess, that is something I think that we'll definitely be arguing for about in the next 50 years, because this is one of the key things that we've seen throughout the 20th century is individualism versus collectivism. That was one of the major points that was at issue during the 20th century. And yes, I'm specifically talking about a lot of the major wars that happened, Cold War in particular, whether it was socialist Russia, communist China, or even the Nazis to a degree when they were going for really a nationalistic state based on other ideals that went way too far. But we're seeing it now in current elections, whether you're looking over at New York City for Zoran Mamdani claiming to run as just an open socialist and trying to socialize everything. I want to say Seattle, Washington also recently elected an openly socialist mayor as well. These are things that keep rearing their heads. And if the current trend of history is to play out, I imagine that we may see a resolution of these ideas in 50 years, but these are generational arguments about ideology that are probably going to last. So that's one for sure. As far as what is an American, I think that that's something that the populace kind of always thinks about. I think we used to have a lot more concrete answers. We definitely don't have concrete answers now, but yeah.
Man. So if you could change something, like what's something that Americans can do to be better? Like if they could focus on one thing, I guess perhaps well, I'm not even gonna say from this book, but like what's like a skill or a piece of knowledge or something that Americans can get to be better?
I would say understanding the political and legal process that exists as it is, not just like the basic theoretical of like, oh, we have three houses of government. It's like, yes, we do, but there's a lot more things that have happened since then and now that have granted additional powers to each of the different branches. Like, if you told the original founders what the Supreme Court does today versus what their original intention was, they would be bewildered. They would call it
Or Congress.
a third legislative branch. If they looked at Congress, they would be ashamed because they thought that that would be the branch to get out of control, and instead
Yeah.
they've effectively just let go of a lot of their power, or they haven't let go of the power. They've delegated it to the executive, and then they also refuse to make legislation, and they refuse to make single legislation and instead have the giant omnibus bills.
Yes.
The
Yeah. Congress doesn't pass laws. Congress writes up a budget and then says we're going to do it or we're not going to do it, and then they hold each other hostage until this bill is a fucking delivered in a wagon, with size 10 font or whatever, like size 4 font. Is fucking ridiculous. Like Congress doesn't pass laws anymore. What's the last law that Congress made that affected you or I today? Sorry. Rabbit hole. What can Americans do to get better, Z? What can we do? Bring us home.
I said understand the government and legal process. The reason that I say that is because it will give you a much clearer picture of where you have the ability to influence things. And spoiler alert, it's at the local level. It is the smallest level nearest you where you can have a lot of the impact. If you're one of those folks that you show up to the election and then you look at the candidates that are proposed by the Democratic and Republican Party, which, by the way, this book and also the Army Manual rallies against the tyranny of the two-party system. But if you're one of the folks that shows up at election day and you look at your Democrat and Republican candidate and you go, wow, I hate both of them. Well, if you get involved at more local levels, you can get involved in these things called primaries. This is how you determine who will become the candidate. And if you get involved in, again, the local level, you can have a good amount of influence about who kind of becomes the cream that rises to the top, who become the names that get thrown around for these ideas. You can try to encourage people to run. You can also try to have debate within the community itself to maybe strike down some ideas that you would say are bad, which could theoretically prevent other people from rising to power in that system. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if you get involved at the local level, you're going to have the most say, you're going to have the most bang for your buck about what gets spent in your local community, what happens, and how you want to see things happen. It's definitely no surprise to say that the internet, social media, telephones, all that kind of stuff has kind of segregated us in society away from being a community into individuals inside of our houses that instead do the social version of what the book argues, which is that we stop being state citizens, we became federal citizens. We stopped being involved in our local community. Instead, we got involved on the internet community of people that we may never interact with. So
say you from your high horse speaking on the internet to an internet audience. You bastard. What are you thinking?
Yes. Call me the hypocrite, but at the same time, on the tactical level, understand that if you do want to connect with people at a level that you cannot do on the community level, the internet can assist with that. But at the same time, if you're one of those people that thinks you're sexually attracted to a toaster and you're looking for a community of people that want to do that, get off Reddit. Please stop. Touch grass. Hug your parents.
Bro, I have an interpretation of what you said, and let me know if my interpretation is accurate.
Hit me.
It's basically get good and invest. Right? Ooh. It's like invest in the thing that's important to you. If you want to make America better, then invest in it. Then do something that's like within your power level. If you go try and invest, okay, like if you try and make an investment move that is outside of your understanding and it is outside of your leverage, then you're probably making a bad investment move. If I go throw all of my money on black at the casino, right? That's not as good as an investment move as it is to buy an appreciating asset that is proven over time, like buying gold, right? might be more strategic long term than throwing it all on black. You know, the house will win if I throw it all on black because they have a 51 or 52% odds because there's still those two green colors, right? So there's you've got all the reds, you've got all the blacks, and there's two greens. So the house wins. Um, the yeah, so like invest where you have the highest leverage, where you can make the difference, you know, which is local most often for most people. Probably most people watching this show, your best bet is to be investing local. Now, eventually, you want to get to the point where you can play with the big boys, where you are actually doing things at the big kid level. But like, why are you getting involved in federal politics when your net worth is less than 10 or 20 or 50 or $100 million? You know, it's like you don't have the entry price to play with these fellas. You cannot compete. You will rely on the big graces, on the graces of the big donors, or the people that have the money, or the people that have the power, whatever the hell, and you'll just get stumped. You're the high school player that showed up to a professional NFL game and you just got smoked. So, like, get good, get powerful, and invest in the things that you can do. Master the level that you're at, and then invest. Master your ability to generate wealth, and then take your excess wealth and put it towards the way that you want to make the world a better place, or something like that. Is that a good way to summarize what you were talking about?
That is an excellent summary and an excellent paraphrase as well. But by the way, nothing we say here is financial advice, but at the same time, though, investing is much more than money. It's time, it's community, it's yourself, it's your skills, it's your resources of what you're able to procure. Because, yeah, at the end of the day, when you get that W-2, you're trading your time and energy for the manifestation of it, which is that thing they call the US dollar, despite how many they may or may not print that day or that
Which is
hour.
a promise, an unconditional promise to pay from the United States to the Federal Reserve that can be redeemed at any point in time, at any place, and is well, it's not redeemable by the bearer, but it is a negotiable instrument. So there you go. It's all Fugazi, anyways. All right.
Yeah, there you go.
That's we covered this book pretty damn well, I would say. I think we did a pretty damn good job covering anything. You had mentioned all the things that you wanted to say, right?
Yes. Any I guess there were two quotes that I had. I didn't find a good place to put them, but they were pretty good quotes, I got to say. One of them was talking about kind of the pioneering spirit and what it takes to be a good citizen, and saying that courage is definitely necessary. But the quote is fear is a pit stop on the way to valor. And I was like,
I like that.
That's good. That's good.
It is, and the people that get stuck at that pit stop are the people that fucking lose and that don't make their way into the history book. So I really like that quote a lot. That was a good choice, Z.
Yeah. The other one was, quote, a man fighting against freedom is a man who hates himself. I was like, oh. This was in reference to collectivism versus individualism, which is that, like, the idea that the human heart yearns for freedom, but then the people that are kind of just like asking to be taken care of by the state are kind of people who don't trust themselves or feel that they've been wronged and are victims of society or system or whatever. So it was a good one. I like that one too.
I think that the two things that we didn't really touch on that were also from the Telegram that I wanted to like that just kind of like struck me. It didn't really have anything to do with the conversation. Was the first one is like the idea is that hoarders see everything from a scarcity mindset and therefore they remain mentally poor forever. So this kind of goes back to the I guess it goes. Oh, son of a bitch! I keep dropping the cork for this wine bottle. But yeah, hoarders are essentially in the scarcity mindset, not in the abundance mindset, despite the crazy wealth of resources that they have. And then the other one that ties in with it is that a cluttered home and a cluttered car are indicative of a cluttered mind, like a cluttered person. You know, people are representatives of what they are. So when you see a person who's dressed nice, who smells nice, who is attractive, who's well-spoken, like they've put intentionality into their appearance and into the things that they do, which is generally indicative of the rest of the stuff. That's why people dress up nice on Sundays, is because when they go out in public and they hang out in church, they want people to think the best of them that is possible, even though they might be wearing pajamas to Walmart the next day. You know, it's like when you go out in public, when you have some sort of public appearance, it is in your best interest to be the best person at all times and let that be reflected by your public appearance, more so than like just fake it when you're in public. Like instead of like, oh my God, we have guests coming over, we got to straighten the house up. It's like, no, just have your house always ready for guests. Have your place um always in the exact way that you want it, you know. And my definition of clutter is very different from other definitions of clutter. And that's for all of my friends who have come and hung out with me while I'm doing towers or gone on any sort of trip with me and seen my truck or whatever the hell. It's like I live a very different life from everyone, but I would not say it's cluttered, and I don't apologize, as everything is in its perfect place and has very intentional meaning. And it's taken me 6 years to figure this process out, but it's like you want your domicile, you want your vehicle, you want your thing that is your representation of you to truly represent who you are. If I walk into someone's car and it's just got nothing but McDonald's wrappers everywhere and a bunch of trash and cat shit and fucking loose hairs all over the place, it's like, oh, this person does not care about things. All right, check into the put them in the category of people that don't care about things, sort of deal. So it's just like, the long and short of it is, be mindful and understand that everyone's always judging you. And so give them something good to judge you on. But more importantly than give them something good to judge you on is be that good thing. Like don't just like show the front. Actually be the thing that is awesome. So those are the two things that I wanted to mention that didn't really get any kind of coverage or anything. And yes, absolutely, Tarnaweg, you do see Wendy poking through my window watching me drop the cork. Yes, I am at a Wendy's right now in the city of Liberal, Kansas. It is not a liberal place, but the city is called Liberal. So yeah, I am just north of the Oklahoma Panhandle. It's like right on the border. Anyways, that's not important. What is important is that you guys are interacting with us, and it's been a while since we've done some chat motherfucking shout-outs. So let's do some chat shout-outs and wrap this fantastic book club up. You guys have been awesome and fantastic, and I love each and every one of you. So let's see who loves us as well. We've been joined by Mr. Tarnyweg. Tarnyweg says, hi, folks. Hello to you too, Tarnyweg. I don't believe I've seen you before, so it's absolutely fantastic to have you with us here on the show tonight.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. And he lets us know that he is still reading through the book, he or she. I presume it's a he. I can't see the picture close up. It looks like it's Dexter. But still reading through the book. It is a fantastic book. I'm going to be reading this book a whole bunch of times because there's a lot of good information in here. I need to make sure that I understand all of it. And that's a big part of the stuff that Brennan Joe Williams talks about, is like, go through it again. Go through it again. Go through it again. Immerse yourself in whatever it is that you want to live. I'm reminded of like when I'm scrolling on Instagram and I see like a really cool like Christian girl, and she's got all these like Bible quotes, and she's dressed up nice, and like she really just like lives and embodies the scripture. And it's like, wow, this person has read the Bible a lot. They have imbibed their self in this thing. When I talk to Sam a lot, Sam's always telling me about the latest Alex Hormozy stream. He's telling me about $100 million offers. When I go and talk to Hexicans or Wild SJ, she talks about Sci-Vive. People, when you hang out with Mormons, they talk about the Book of Mormon. They talk about all these things. When you hang out with politicians, they talk politics. If you immerse yourself in the thing that you think is cool, and it's something that's important to you, then you can change your life with the information that's inside this thing. So take the good, leave out the bad, and definitely continue reading through the book, broski.
Excuse me.
And bless you, Zenith. Next up, we got from Arceus: passion and arbitrary decisions appear common to all forms of government. I think that's just people. I will say, I don't think it's just people. I will say that this is correct, and it is not a good thing, and it's not something that we should just dismiss. I think that is something that does happen, and it's going to always happen, but we need to actively work against it, just like we need to actively work against all the bad things that happen in life. So I wouldn't say it's just people. I will say that it is a very, because saying it's just people would be like a dismissive way to say something where it's like, this is a thing that exists and there's nothing can be done about it. It's like, no, this is a thing that exists, and I do acknowledge that it happens a lot, but I think that it's not an ideal, and I think that we should fight against it and not just say like, oh, that's part of the pie, we got to eat it. It's like, nah, we got to scoop the mold off the cheese.
I slightly disagree with you. I think this is a reference which is when he's saying, I think that's just people, I think he's saying that's just human nature. And it's in reference to when I was referring back to the reason the founding fathers established the government the way it did is because they understood what human nature was. And instead of trying to suppress it, they just said, let's make it work. Let's make it work how it wants, but we're going to pit it in opposition against other people also seeking ambition and power. So that way it balances itself out. It's not saying I can fix humanity, but it's saying we can create a system where humanity will keep itself in check through its
Yep.
self-incentivized procedures. Yeah.
And speaking of the way that humanity keeps itself in check, we've got Moondog over here with an excellent point. Courtrooms care way more about process than any specific person's truth, for what it's
Will,
worth.
What do you think I'm going
And
to say on this one?
what's that?
What do you think I'm going to say on this one?
I don't know what you're going to say because I don't think from your mindset. I will simply say that the thing that I'm going to think about this is that it is important to master the process and to remove yourself from the equation when you're dealing with the courts. It's not that they don't care. It's about you. It's that they care very much about their thing that you're inside of and that you're working with. And so if you try and impose your own thing when you're in someone else's house and you don't understand how their house works, then you're oftentimes going to get a whole bunch of bad results. And so it behooves the person that's trying to make a difference with their actions to understand how best one's actions can make that actual difference. Zenith, what is your point that you wanted to say?
Moondog's probably not going to be happy with me on this one, but I understand the sentiment. This is something that I think that if you're not involved in it, you can have an idea about how things work, and then a lot of people feel screwed by the court systems. And hear me out. Does it happen? Yeah, sure it does. At the same time, though, the process of courts and legal proceedings is to help find the truth, but they care a lot about process because if you don't adhere to a strict process, it incentivizes bad behavior in what should be a very pure process about finding truth and getting to the bottom of things in a way that is just. So justice cares a lot about process because it is the thing that we have agreed on as the rules by the game we are which to abide. And if you incentivize people that play outside of those rules in order to get what they want and kind of just exercise power at just raw level, then it does ultimately corrupt the system even worse than ways that people believe it is already corrupted. So look, I'm not defending everything, but I'm just saying that process is important because if you don't follow the process, then you're trying to kind of change the rules of the game. In specifically the case where everyone coming in needs to understand the exact rules of the game and needs to stay inside of those rules. So, yeah.
Moondog makes us think. I like it. I like it.
Good stuff, sir.
But we've also got Mr. Chad Donnerschwanz, everyone's favorite buff Pepe on the moon, who says, hello, fellow based crypto bros. Hello to you too, Chad Donnerschwanz. Good to see you. Another good person it's good to see is my dear brother, Sam. Sam says, this is a good book and a good show. Thank you, brother Sam. I am working on the task that we were talking about before stream. We're going to try and play Halo after stream, but I'm on a tough book. With Windows 10, and I have no idea how much RAM and hard drive, so I don't know if I'll be able to play Halo. But we're going to work on it.
It's also graphical processing power, because I don't think that thing has a dedicated GPU. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I think I can barely run Minecraft, so we're fixing to have some crashes here, but that's okay. It's good to see you, Sam. Thanks for hopping into the show. I always like seeing my brothers.
Thanks, Sam.
And everything. That is fucking sick. And speaking of brothers, I've got another brother, Mr. Moonpilled Rational Optics, who states that if you've ever listened to The Fat Electrician, the pride you feel as an American is unparalleled. I am not sure who The Fat Electrician is. I've heard that name many times, but
he is a guy that runs a YouTube channel, but he's primarily an American historian that gives you a lot of kind of like the cool untold stories or corrects a lot of the myths that go on with American history. If you know Donut Operator, Brandon Herrera, and the guys over at the Unsubscribed podcast over there. He's part of their group, and he does a lot of cool stuff. Good historical good historical, a lot of focus on military, but yeah, when you hear the stories, it's a lot of good time. And he has a video that I really like where he talks about how America accidentally almost nuked itself or someone else like 3 or 4 times during the Cold War, and gives you the story behind each of those. Thankfully, there were
That's
no
pretty
nuclear
cool.
detonations, but they're like, here's how close it got to going off.
Oh, that could be
It's
fun. Okay,
kinda
well, it
scary.
sounds like a cool guy. So yeah, that's the sort of thing that makes me feel proud to be an American, is knowing that the government will accidentally nuke us 3 or 4 times, but will make so many mistakes that it won't actually happen. So
Dude,
that's
Cold
something that
War
I
was
can be
a
proud of.
wild time. If you talk
Oh
to
yeah.
people just about like what the atmosphere was during that era, it is an era where people like were wound tighter than a spring at all times.
hmm That's
So
that's a a tricky but unrelatable feeling for me. So I would be I'm glad that I am alive for the time of America that I am. And by the way, we've got Mr. Lafayette himself saying it is the pride of my heart to have been one of the earliest adopted sons of America. I can't remember Lafayette's first name. I know that Moonpilled he said him earlier on in the stream, but yeah, that's a fantastic quote right there as well. Um,
yeah.
We've got some more thoughts from Mr. Tarnaweg. So, plus gerrymandering of districts and the courts. The court is supposed to be a neutral party, not an additional arm working for the executive. Yes, there's many ways that the stuff gets bastardized. It's a man. That's a whole can of worms. A whole can of worms. Good sir. Z, do you have a quick elevator pitch to your eye roll thought you had there, bro?
That was not an eye roll. That was thinking about all the different things to say on this one. Because, like you said, this is an entire can of worms. But yeah, the role of the courts is something that is hotly debated amongst people that are on the bench, previously on the bench, never on the bench, never will touch the bench, about what is the role of a court. And we've definitely seen that conversation come up as well during this latest Trump administration with all the various district courts that were pretty much trying to use their judicial authority to block nationwide federal executive orders or actions being taken, and then also do the inverse, which is use their rule to impose the executive to do different things. These are legitimately constitutional questions that we're seeing today. But yeah, the original intent of the courts, especially the Supreme Court, was pretty much just to give thumbs up and thumbs down on whether legislation coming through was constitutional or unconstitutional. And then we've
We got a
evolved
mess.
a long way since then. Case
Yep.
law is lengthy and extensive. I'll say that much.
It is what an interesting system of precedent. And speaking of interesting legal stuff, should we all have to pass the immigrant citizenship test?
Theoretically,
Ooh,
this used to be called graduating high school.
I mean, shit. That's I think that if you want franchise, you have to pass the test. Anyone can reside in America. Anyone can domicile in America. Anyone can declare their nationality as American. Anyone can become an American national by, pledging allegiance to America and yada 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 and all that stuff. Like I I think that if you want to wield power in America, or not legislative, political power, then there should be some sort of criteria. So it's an interesting question, Arceus. Thank you.
Sentiment and logistics greatly differ when it comes to that one, because I
Mhm.
definitely agree with the sentiment, which is like, yeah, you probably should be able to pass a citizenship test. But then the logistical thing gets into the idea of, okay, who makes the test? What is the test? How do you get to the test? All that kind of stuff. So again, great idea, very difficult to implement properly in real life.
Yep. I think that it should be a coin flip. It should be totally arbitrary with no actual no actual value. By the way, Tarnawig says it's been a while since he's last stopped through. It's good to see you, broski. Welcome back. You made it home. The prodigal son has returned.
Always
So
happy to have folks.
yep, you have found your way back to the right spot. And then Moondog has a thought, and then we will go ahead and wrap up. Wrong. Courts care about process because of culpability, liability, not in service to truth, even though that's an alleged ideal argument evidenced by Fruit's case law. Justice equals blind, not truth. So that's a fun thought right there, Mr. Moondog. And then also, process is important, but I can point you to the improper prioritizations over truth to make my case for what it's worth.
For the
Man,
to make my case, but This is a good one.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yes, I
Very
hear you,
good.
brother. I hear
Yeah.
you. I really do.
But there, man. The United States is not what it should be, but the way that we get the United States to where it should be is by becoming better ourselves and by investing. And that's what it means to be a pickletarian, is to be the best that you can and then to spread that bestness to other places. I think that's also what it means to be a hexkin, to be a degen, to be an American, to be a US national, to be a good person. So, there you go. Mr. Zenith, final thoughts on the book. Where do you think that this book should be on our 0 to 10,000 hour spectrum? Maybe not necessarily for like cryptocurrency, but for like, just general knowledge of being a good, well-rounded pickletarian or hexagon or American or person or something.
This book is definitely an American book, by the way. So apologies to our international audience. This one may not apply directly to you, but the concepts
I
are.
apologize for nothing. Come to America, and you'll
Hey,
understand. Sorry, Z.
We'd
Continue.
love to have you. But look, like I said at the beginning, if you are interested in kind of just like wanting to know more about citizenship, the government, kind of the ideas behind everything going on, this is a great primer. It is 7.5 hours long. Arguably, you only need 6 of it to really get the good history and the good arguments for it based on the old Army manual. You can skip the last chapter as far as I'm concerned. So I think it's a fantastic primer, and like it hits all the major points. It's succinct. It doesn't waste your time, but it also gives you a good understanding of what the people were saying at the time, not just what people are saying now about then. It really does a good job of trying to go back and propose the original arguments as they were made with the understanding of the language at the time. And because of that, like, that's why I think this is a great read. Even for someone like me who's tried to really get in the weeds and all this stuff, this is just like, it's one of those books where you hear someone explain the concept in a way that just feels simple but still hits all the points, and it just hits you, that it gives you that good itch of like, oh yes, this is what I've been trying to say all these years. Like, this is one of those books. So do they talk a little bit about currency in this one? Yes, they do, by the way. Is it necessary for your crypto investing or just generalized investing knowledge? I would argue it's not necessary. I think it might be able to help with some basic concepts, but overall, because it's a great primer, because it's well written, I would put this close to about 100 hours. I know you do, Z. Otherwise, I wouldn't use so much of my time sharing.
Yep. Yes. Thank you, Moondog. We appreciate your investment here, broski. Your input is
to give you the Fast Times at Ridgemont High reference. Well, you keep saying it's like your time and my time, but isn't really our time. Thanks, Moondog. Love you, man.
So 100 hours is where you would put it, Zenith. I think that's that's good.
It's good, it's basic, and it gives you exactly what you need.
I do think that that this book is indicative of a lot of the core principles that Brandon Joe Williams talks about, of which a very large portion is money. And because of that, I think that this book is, I would agree with 100 hours of like expertise to read this book. And I would recommend, if you don't understand the things in this book, then just reread it again. Or like if you find yourself reading this book and you don't understand it, then go and live your life and then come back to it. And then like consume more material, gain more experience, and then come back to it again. Because I think that the stuff in here is quite important and definitely worth investing your attention and your understanding into. So
I see what you did there.
There you go. So I would agree. 100 hours. That's where I would put this book as well. On a journey from nothingness to excellence, nothingness being 0 hours, excellence and mastery being 10,000 hours. You should read this book early-ish on in your journey. So that's my 2 cents there. Zenith, where can the folks find you, and what have you got going on in the near future? And have you thought of a new book for next book club?
Oh gosh, I actually have not thought of a new book, but I might go pull a recommendation from our suggestions topic, but I will post that shortly soon. I don't want to finish it off just yet.
All right.
Anyways, folks, you can find me and Will and the rest of the team here on many of the streams that we do 3 times a week. It's going to be Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. The next show that you guys can catch is our flagship news show on Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, as always, where this week we're going to have to be making some good cases about why the bull market is or is not over based on the movement that we've had this week. There has also been a lot of talk about liquidity in the overall markets, not just the crypto markets, as one of the reasons why we've seen the price movement that we have. So I'm looking forward to having the great debate with the team over there and talk about what's going on. But outside of that, we're going to be back for Whiskey Wednesday, which, by the way, this last one was a good one. We had an extended crew on there, and we had a fantastic time. But then after that, yes, we will be back next Friday, where I will be hosting a book club, and I will let you know what the topic is. I'll be honest, there's a pretty decent chance I'm just going to pick what Moonpilled posted there if it looks interesting to me. But I did finish up the Devil's Advocate arc, so I'm looking forward to get back to reading books that I find interesting and furthering of the thoughts that I think are good and valid and true, if you will, to use that word that we hotly debated tonight. But outside of that, folks, you can find me on Instagram and X at ZenithDI. And then outside of that, right here on the streams, like we said. Mr. Will Stevenson, where can the folks find you? And what do you have going on in the near future?
So the folks can find me right now, tonight, in Liberal, Kansas, just north of the Oklahoma Panhandle. But I am not going to be here for long because a bunch of our jobs that I thought we were going to be doing are gone. So I have to figure out what I'm doing next. I think that I'm going to make my way to my Thanksgiving destination and visit friends along the way. Hopefully I don't run out of funds before the paycheck comes in from all this work that we've been doing. So that is and have to liquidate some crypto. So that's something, those are things that I'm considering. But then probably going to be going back to Texas after that, working up and getting a nice big old chunk of money, and then probably going on some sort of Christmas vacation around the States is what I'm thinking. So that's my plan as far as where can you guys find me in the near future is between the Panhandle and Columbus, Ohio, and Texas and the Northeast. So that's my general idea. And then we might get mobilized to go down and do a job in Vegas. So we'll see what goes on. We'll see what goes on with this tower knocking over campaign. So that's the literal places you can find me. And like Zenith was saying, we stream here every Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. DGen Roundtable, 8 p.m. Eastern is when we start. Wednesdays, we talk to people. Fridays, we do book club. And Sunday, we cover the crypto weekly news.
By the way, as one final shout out, if you want a little bit of extra sauce, we don't usually do special guests on Sunday, but this last Sunday, we went a special extended edition because we were joined by our good friend Fast Abdul to talk about a lot of the stuff going on with Pulse Chain and the Prove X token sacrifice. So we went a full 3 hours. The last hour, Fast Abdul is on there with us. So if you're interested in hearing what he has to say, which, by the way, I think is a really good take, good sentiment, and a good pulse about what's going on, check out that episode for sure. We're always thankful for our friends when they stop by, and including you guys for when you stop by in the chats here tonight. It was a good one, good conversation, and I appreciate all the questions, even though they make me contemplate whether or not to go down that rabbit hole or open that can of worms, but they're all great.
Excellent. Yep, absolutely. That was a real good time. I enjoyed having Mr. Fast Abdul on. That was super duper fucking awesome. So
love that guy.
That being said, Mr. Zenith, I suppose I will do the production for the ending of the show, but I want to leave the folks at home with a fantastic quote before we read the end of show copywriting. And I would like to let them know, actually, we're going to do 2 quotes. So one, and this is from Daniel Webster to the President of the United States. Mr. President, when the mariner has been tossed for many days in thick weather and on an unknown sea, he naturally avails himself of the first pause in the storm to take his latitude and ascertain how far the elements have driven him from his true course. And that is to honor both the chronological thing, but also to let you guys know that, like, yeah, life's going to be crazy. Life's going to be difficult. You got to go through the tumult, and then you got to reset yourself, take your bearings, and continue on the straight and true. And then finally, character is the greatest asset of America. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all for spending your valuable time with us here on the DGen Roundtable. As Agent Jay often says, we know that time is your most valuable asset, and we appreciate you investing it right here with us. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Will Stevenson, but more importantly, you have been watching the DGen Roundtable. I'll be the producer for now, and so I need to get my trigger finger ready so I can remind all the folks at home to remember to DGen responsibly.